The crown knew my secret before I had words for it. I felt it settle on my shoulders like a verdict, and the more I tried to outrun it, the more certain it became. In the palace, mornings gleam with polished marble and bright silks, as if beauty could keep grief at a distance. I move through corridors heavy with perfume and prayer, smiling for portraits that do not blink. At breakfast, my own blood speaks in careful compliments that cut deeper than insults. Beyond the windows, banners snap in a red wind, and the drums of war pretend to be far away. By evening, the council gathers stern, immaculate, hungry for obedience, and one voice among them watches me as if it already owns the ending. Meanwhile, the love I must not name waits in the hush between doors, and I step toward it. The first time I understood that a crown can watch a person, I was 17, and still foolish enough to believe that walls were only stone. Our palace was built of honey-colored marble that caught the sun and returned it warmer, as if the very corridors wished to flatter whoever walked them. The ceilings were painted with battles no living man remembered, and angels no priest would claim. In the morning, the high windows spilled light like molten gold onto the red carpets, and the servants moved through it in quiet procession, hands folded, eyes lowered, as though they carried the weight of our names in their palms. I was born to that light. I was raised beneath those painted walls. I learned to smile before I learned to read. They called me Prince Alaric, first son of King Edric, heir by blood and by expectation. I knew how to hold a goblet so the jewels on my ring would gleam. I knew how to bow without looking submissive. I knew how to sit on a throne that was not yet mine, and make my spine forget the desire to lean. And still, there were mornings I woke with my throat tight, as if some unseen hand had been there in the night, measuring my breath. A crown does not only rest upon a head, it rests upon a life. My mother used to say that beauty was a duty. You must be seen, she would tell me, as her ladies braided her hair into heavy ropes, threaded with pearls. Her face was famous across the kingdom's high cheekbones, dark brows that arched like a painted stroke, lips the color of crushed berries. Even in grief, she was magnificent, especially in grief. She would lift my chin with a gloved finger and inspect me the way one inspects a blade. "Your eyes are too honest," she would murmur. "Train them." I tried. But honesty was not the only flaw the palace found in me. My brother Cassian was 2 years younger, and born with an ease that made people forgive his sharpness. He was golden where I was dark, laughter where I was restraint. In the courtyard, he sparred with the captains until sweat shone on his throat, then turned that same throat toward the ladies on the gallery and smiled, as if war were a game invented for his amusement. He would clap my shoulder and say, "You will rule with ink and sighs, Alaric. Let me rule with steel." The court adored him for it. My sister Eloan was the quiet one, though not the gentle kind of quiet. Her silence was a blade she hid in velvet. She watched everything. She wore emerald gowns that made her pale skin look luminous, and she spoke rarely, but when she did, people remembered. We were a painted family, a story told in rich colors and careful poses. And like most stories, it hid the ugly truths in the margins. My father, King Edric, did not age so much as harden. His beard had once been brown. Now it was streaked with iron. His gaze could pin a man without raising his voice. In the great hall he looked carved from the same stone as the statues of our ancestors, as if bloodline itself had shaped his shoulders and set his jaw. He loved us in the way kings love, as extensions of the realm, as pieces on a board, as promises. In public, he would place a hand upon my shoulder, heavy and brief, and the court would sigh with relief at the sight. In private, he studied me as if I were a map he had not yet learned to read. It was on one such private evening that I first felt the crown's attention, though I did not have the words for it then. A storm had come in from the west. The windows trembled. In the solar, candles bent and shivered in their sconces. My father sat at the table with a goblet of wine untouched before him. the red surface dark as old blood. "You have been walking the eastern gallery," he said. It was not a question. I kept my face calm. "It is quiet there. It overlooks the river road." "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, and the carved lions on the armrests seemed to stare with him. "Do you know what travels that road, Alaric? Merchants, farmers, soldiers, spies," he said softly. "Messages. Men who would sell their mothers for a purse of silver." I waited. My stomach felt like it had been laced too tight. "You are watched," my father continued. "Not because you are weak, but because you are valuable. The moment you stop understanding that, you will become dangerous to yourself." I should have promised vigilance. I should have offered obedience. I did what I always did when frightened. I answered carefully. "I understand, Father." His eyes did not leave mine. "Do you?" Outside, thunder rolled like distant cannon. The candle flames dipped and recovered. "I do," I insisted. He nodded once, as if taking note of the lie, but letting it stand. "Then remember this," he said, and his voice turned colder. "In this palace, nothing belongs to you, not your time, not your heart, not even your thoughts. If you keep something hidden, it will not remain hidden. It will simply become someone else's weapon." That sentence stayed with me long after the storm moved on. It haunted me in the mornings when I dressed in velvet and sable, my collar pinned with the sigil of our house, a silver hawk clutching a crown. It followed me into the chapel, where priests muttered prayers for victory at borders our people had never seen. It pressed against my ribs when I sat beside my mother in public, smiling as she smiled, while women whispered about my future bride. Future bride. There was always a name. Lady Seraphine of House Vane had arrived at court in a carriage, lacquered black and trimmed in crimson, like a funeral dressed as a celebration. The first time I saw her, she stepped into the sunlight as if it existed for her alone. Her hair was pale, almost white-worn in a coil adorned with rubies. Her eyes were a sharp blue that made even seasoned courtiers glance away first. She was beauty sharpened into a threat. The ladies admired her gowns. The men admired her fearlessness. The council admired her father's ships and his soldiers, and the way his coin could fill our armories. My mother admired her pedigree. My father admired her usefulness. Lady Seraphine admired nothing unless it belonged to her. When she greeted me, she kissed my cheek with perfect grace and murmured, "Your kingdom smells of roses and rust, Your Highness. I think I shall like it." Her smile did not touch her eyes. Behind her came Lord Chancellor Marius, as he always did, moving like a shadow that had learned to wear silk. His hair was silvered at the temples, his face unlined, except for the faint creases of a man who smiled often, without ever feeling it. He bowed to me, and for a moment his gaze held mine with a familiarity that made my skin tighten. Marius belonged to the council the way poison belongs to a cup, unseen until the moment it matters. He had advised my father since before I was born. He had selected tutors, arranged marriages, signed warrants. He spoke of loyalty and law, and somehow the palace always bent the way he desired, without ever appearing to. The first time I heard him speak my name in the council chamber, I understood what it meant to be discussed like territory. "The prince is of age," he said, fingers steepled. "The people crave certainty. The border lords grow restless. War is a whisper that will become a shout if we do not answer with strength." My father sat at the head of the table beneath the great tapestry of our founding. Cassian stood behind him, restless, shining. Ilawan sat to my left, still as a statue. I sat to my right, composed, my hands folded so no one would see the slight tremor in my thumb. "The prince will marry," Marius continued, "and the alliance will bind the coast to our banner. We will show our enemies we are not divided." Divided, as if the word were a blade slipped between ribs. Seraphine was not in the chamber, but her presence was. I could feel her like perfume left in a room long after the wearer has gone. My father's gaze moved to me. "Do you object?" he asked. If I had been braver, Perhaps I would have spoken. If I had been less trained, perhaps I would have shouted. But I was a prince raised in honey-colored marble, and I had learned how to keep my face from betraying me. I serve the realm, I said. Marius's smile was faint, spoken like a future king. Cassian's mouth twitched, as if suppressing laughter. Eloan's eyes flicked toward me, just once, quick as a blade catching light. After the council dismissed, I walked the palace corridors until the lamps were lit and the air grew cooler. I moved past portraits of kings and queens with eyes that followed, past carved pillars and gilded mirrors that returned my face to me. Dark hair, a straight nose, lips pressed too often into restraint, eyes that my mother said were too honest. In the eastern gallery, the river road lay below like a ribbon. Wagons crept along it in the fading light. Somewhere beyond that horizon, armies gathered. Beyond that, kingdoms watched hours and measured it. Someone was always measuring. I reached the far end of the gallery where a small door led to a stairwell rarely used by anyone but servants. The latch was cold beneath my palm. I should not have gone down. I had been warned. I knew the palace was a mouthful of tongues, but there are things in a person that do not listen to reason. There are hungers that do not bow. In the dimness below, the air smelled of beeswax and old stone. My footsteps sounded too loud. I descended until I reached a passage where the walls were bare and unadorned, where no portraits watched and no tapestries hid listening ears. A lantern hung from a hook. Someone had lit it recently. I did not call out. I did not need to. He stepped from the shadow as if he had been made from it. Rowan, Captain Rowanvale of the Palace Guard, was not noble by birth, but he carried himself with a gravity that made birth feel irrelevant. His face was striking in the way storms are striking dark brows, a mouth shaped for restraint, eyes that had seen blood and did not flinch. A scar cut through the edge of his jaw, white against his skin, as if a blade had once tried to claim him and failed. In that lantern light, his uniform looked almost black, the silver thread of his insignia catching fire. His hands were bare, but they held themselves as if still remembering gauntlets. He looked at me as if I were not a prince, as if I were only a man standing too close to the edge of something. "You should not be here," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say. There were only 2 I dared. "Are you followed?" he asked. "No." His gaze swept the corridor behind me anyway. The movement practiced. "The council has ears." "I know," I said again, and it sounded like a confession. For a moment, neither of us moved. The lantern flame made gold of the air between us. My heart beat with a steady inevitability, as if some part of me had always been walking toward this point. Rowan's voice softened. "You look like you have not slept." "Sleep is a luxury," I murmured. "Apparently, so is choosing one's own life." His jaw tightened, the scar pulling faintly. "They are pressing you." "Yes." He exhaled slowly, and the restraint in him strained like rope. He stepped closer, just enough that I could smell leather and steel and the faint smoke of torches. "You cannot meet me like this," he said. "It is dangerous." "I did not come for safety," I answered, and the honesty of it startled even me. His eyes held mine, and for an instant I saw something there that was not soldier, not subject, not guard. Something intimate, something that made my chest ache. Then, from above, the faint sound of footsteps in the stairwell. Rowan's hand lifted, not touching me, but hovering near my arm as if he could pull me into shadow with will alone. His expression changed sharp, alert, controlled. "Go," he whispered. I did not move fast enough, or perhaps the palace had already decided. The footsteps paused, a key turned. The stairwell door creaked. A voice drifted down, smooth as silk. "Your Highness," Lord Chancellor Marius called, as if he had simply wandered by and thought to greet me. "How fortunate! The king has been searching for you." In that moment, I understood something I had not wanted to know. I had believed my secret was mine because I had never named it aloud, because I had never dared to look at it too directly. But the crown did not require my understanding to bind me. It had learned my secret before I did. Marius did not descend the stairs. He did not need to. His voice alone was enough to turn the corridor into a courtroom. I felt Rowan's presence beside me like a shield that could not be raised without admitting the wound. The lantern flame quivered, throwing gold along the stone, and I became sharply aware of every detail that would be remembered. The angle of my body, the closeness between us, the fact that a prince stood in a servant's passage at night as though he belonged there. I forced my shoulders back, the way my tutors had drilled into my bones. I smoothed my face into calm. "Chancellor," I called upward, letting my voice carry the easy authority of someone who had nothing to hide. I was taking air. The palace grows stifling. A pause, a soft sound, like a smile you could hear. "So it does," Marius replied, "especially when choices approach." I hated him for the elegance of that sentence. Rowan shifted his weight, barely. The movement was small, disciplined, and yet I felt it like a warning. Do not answer too much. Do not invite conversation. Do not offer a rope for them to knot around your throat. I took one step toward the stairwell, away from Rowan, as if I had merely stumbled upon him. "It seems I have also found Captain Vale," I said lightly. "He keeps the palace safer than the council keeps it honest." Rowan's jaw tightened, but he held his silence. Marius laughed softly. "A charming jest, Your Highness. Still, I advise you to return. His Majesty is not fond of being kept waiting." The key turned again. The door above closed with careful finality. Footsteps withdrew, slow enough to make sure we heard them. He was leaving us in the corridor on purpose, leaving the taste of threat without the satisfaction of confrontation. For several breaths, neither Rowan nor I moved. Then Rowan spoke, his voice low. "He followed you. Yes, you cannot come here again." I know. There was a cruelty in how often I said those words. They were my confession and my surrender. Rowan's gaze held mine, fierce and controlled. "If he suspects, he does not suspect." I cut in, too quickly. "He knows." The lantern made his eyes look darker than they were. Something shifted behind them, something that did not belong to a soldier. Anger, perhaps, or grief. "He has always known," I added, quieter, as if saying it more softly might make it less true. "He knows things before they happen." Rowan's hand lifted, then fell again, as though he had almost reached for me and remembered the world. "Then you must be careful." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to shake. "I have been careful my entire life," I whispered. "It has never saved me." The corridor felt suddenly too narrow, too intimate. If I stayed, I would say something I could not take back. If I left, I would carry the ache of his nearness up into the glittering halls where my betrothal waited like a chain of jewels. Rowan's voice roughened. Alaric, hearing my name without title, was like being touched. I stepped back, forcing distance into the air between us. "Do not," I said, though I did not know what I meant. "Do not say you feel it too. Do not remind me I am human. Do not make me choose." His mouth tightened. He gave a single, short nod, the kind soldiers give when they accept an order they despise. I turned and climbed the stairs before my resolve could fray. At the top, the palace returned to its splendor, as if it had never let me slip into the dark. Lamps glowed in glass globes, scattering warm light across marble. Tapestries hung heavy with embroidered victories. The scent of roses returned, mixed with incense from the chapel. Servants glided like ghosts, pretending not to see my flushed face, the faint disorder in my hair. In the great corridor leading to my father's chambers, my mother waited. Queen Isolde did not pace. Queens do not pace. They stand as if the world must arrange itself around them. She wore deep violet velvet trimmed with silver, her throat bare except for a necklace of sapphires that could have ransomed a city. Her hair was braided and pinned, perfect despite the hour. Her beauty was a weapon she had never been forced to lay down. When she saw me, Her eyes narrowed, slightly not with anger, but with calculation. "You were gone," she said. "I walked," I replied. "You walked," she repeated, tasting the excuse. "At night, alone." After the council meeting, her voice was smooth, but I had grown up listening to the silences between her words. She was not only my mother, she was my father's partner in rule, his most visible symbol of continuity, and she was a woman who had learned that love can be used, or it can be lost. "Father sent for me," I said. "Yes," she answered. "He did, because the Chancellor brought him a concern." My stomach dropped so sharply, I felt it in my teeth. I kept my face still. "A concern." Queen Isolde stepped closer, close enough that her perfume jasmine and something sharper beneath filled my lungs. "You are my son," she said, quiet as a prayer. "Before you are anything else, so listen carefully. There are eyes on you now that were not there yesterday. They have always been there," I said. "No." Her gaze flicked up and down my face, as if searching for a crack. "Not like this. Not hungry." In the distance, I heard laughter, music, faint, drifting from a late gathering in one of the salons. The palace celebrating itself while it tightened its grip around my throat. "I have done nothing wrong," I said, and even to my own ears it sounded like a plea. My mother's expression softened for a heartbeat. Then it hardened again, as if softness was indulgence she could not afford. "Wrong is not the measure here," she replied. "Danger is." She turned, the skirts of her gown whispering across the floor, and motioned for me to follow. Inside my father's chambers, the fire burned low. King Edric stood by the window with his hands clasped behind his back, his silhouette cut against the night. The river road was invisible from here, but I imagined it anyway. Imagined the wagons and soldiers and spies moving beneath the same moon. Lord Chancellor Marius sat in a chair near the hearth, as relaxed as if he were in his own home. A goblet rested in his hand. He did not rise when I entered. That, more than anything, made me want to strike him. My father did not turn. "Where were you?" he asked. I kept my voice steady. "Walking with whom?" he asked, still facing the glass. My mouth went dry. Queen Isolde watched me, her face unreadable. Marius watched me, his eyes bright with quiet amusement, as if my silence were entertainment. "With no one," I said. Marius's smile deepened, just slightly. "How lonely royalty must be," he murmured, "even when it is not." My father's head tilted a fraction. "Speak plainly," he ordered. Marius set his goblet down with deliberate care. "Your Majesty, I would never presume to intrude upon family matters, but the palace is not merely a home. It is a living instrument of the realm. It hears, it sees. Say it," my father said, and his voice was iron now. Marius inclined his head. "There are whispers that the prince has taken an interest in unsuitable company." My mother's fingers tightened around the jeweled clasp of her sleeve, the only sign she gave of feeling anything at all. My father finally turned. His eyes landed on me with the weight of verdict. "Is it true?" I should have denied harder. I should have lied better. I should have been the son my mother trained, with eyes less honest. But I was tired. Tired of the marble. Tired of the performance. Tired of carrying a secret that had begun to feel like a living thing inside my chest, pushing against my ribs, demanding air. "It depends what you mean by interest," I said. The room went still. Marius's gaze sharpened with satisfaction, as if he had drawn blood with a needle. My father's face did not change, but the firelight made his eyes look darker, older. "I mean," he said, "that you are heir to a kingdom bleeding at its borders, that you are about to be married to bind us to allies, that you will be crowned one day, and your crown cannot sit on a head distracted by indulgence." Indulgence. That was what they called it when love did not serve them. My mother spoke then, her tone measured. "Alaric, tell your father that nothing has compromised you." Compromised. Another word that tasted like a chain. My throat tightened. I glanced at Marius, and saw in his expression the shape of my future if I answered wrong. Rumors fed to nobles, letters sent to allies, soldiers given quiet orders, secrets turned into levers. I looked back at my father. "I have not betrayed the realm," I said. "That is not an answer," my father snapped, and for the first time in years his temper cracked through the kingly restraint. "Do you think you are the first royal who has wanted something forbidden? Desire is not special, it is common. What matters is whether you will let it undo what generations have built." I flinched at that, because he had touched the wound beneath the argument. Legacy, bloodline, the invisible ancestors painted on the walls, their eyes fixed on me as if waiting to see whether I would be the one who ruined everything. My mother stepped closer to my father, her hand hovering near his arm as if she might calm him with touch. She did not touch. "Edric," she said softly, "he is young, he is the heir," my father replied, without looking at her. Marius spoke again, smooth as oil. "Your Majesty, perhaps it would ease matters if the prince were reminded of the benefits awaiting him. Lady Seraphine is not only beautiful, she is devoted to the alliance. Her family has pledged ships, men, coin. She has already instructed her seamstresses to prepare the bridal wardrobe in our colors, crimson and gold, crimson and gold, the colors of our banner, the colors of blood and glory." I saw Seraphine in my mind, her pale hair, her cold smile, her eyes that measured everything as if it belonged to her. I imagined standing beside her in the cathedral, exchanging vows while the people cheered, while Rowan stood somewhere among the guards, watching with a face of stone. My stomach turned. My sister's voice cut through the air before I even realized she was there. "Iloan," my mother said sharply, startled. I turned. In the shadow near the doorway, Iloan stood with a candle in her hand, emerald silk draped over her shoulders like a cloak. She must have entered without anyone noticing, which was exactly the sort of thing she did. Her eyes settled on me, calm and merciless. "Do you love her?" Iloan asked. The question struck like a slap. Marius's brows lifted, amused. My father's jaw clenched. My mother's face tightened with warning. I could not answer, not truthfully. Iloan stepped forward, candlelight making her features glow. I asked because everyone keeps speaking as if marriage is merely ink on parchment. But marriage is a bed. It is children. It is a life bound so tightly you cannot breathe without permission. My mother hissed Iloan. Iloan did not look at her. She looked at me as if she could see through my skin. "Do you love her?" she repeated. I felt the inevitability of it then, not as an idea, but as a weight pressing down from above. The crown, the council, the war at our borders, like a storm line. My family arranged around me like painted figures in a tapestry, each one pulling a different thread, and beneath all of it, the secret love I had never dared to name, because naming it would make it real enough to destroy me. My father's voice was quieter now, more dangerous for it. "Answer." I opened my mouth. What came out was not the lie they wanted, nor the truth that would ruin us. "It does not matter," I said. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Marius smiled as if I had handed him exactly what he needed. "It matters," he said gently, "because the council will not allow uncertainty, and the realm cannot afford a prince who thinks his heart is separate from his duty." My father stared at me, as if weighing whether I was still his son or already his problem. My mother's eyes shone, not with tears, but with fury held tightly behind elegance. Iloan's expression did not change, but her grip on the candle tightened until wax dripped onto her fingers. She did not flinch. I stood in the center of them all, and I understood the cruelty of inevitability. It does not arrive with thunder. It arrives with a room full of people you love, each one insisting they are saving you while they build the cage. My father spoke at last. "You will make yourselves presentable," he said. "Tomorrow you will ride with Seraphine in the public gardens. You will let the court see devotion. You will give them certainty. And if I refuse?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Marius answered instead of the king. Then the council will begin to ask what else you refuse. And in times of war, questions become knives. My father's gaze did not soften. Do not test me, Alaric. I wanted to tell him that I had been tested since birth, that the crown had been testing me with every breath. But I only bowed, perfect, controlled, like the prince my mother had trained. As you command, I said, and as I left the chamber, I felt the palace watching me again. Walls, portraits, servants, councilmen, every eye and ear sharpened by the scent of weakness. Somewhere below, in the dark passages I had just abandoned, Rowan existed like a forbidden truth. And above, in the glittering salons, Seraphine waited like a jeweled dagger. The morning arrived, dressed as celebration. Sunlight flooded the palace courtyards, striking marble until it gleamed white gold, as if the walls themselves wished to deny the shadows of the previous night. Servants moved quickly, almost eagerly, whispering behind hands, polishing what was already polished. News traveled faster than orders ever did. By the time I dressed, the court already knew where I would ride, with whom, and why. I stood before the mirror while my valet adjusted the fall of my crimson cloak. The color was chosen deliberately. Seraphine's color, alliance color, war color. You look every inch the future king. The valet murmured, admiration practiced but sincere. I looked at my reflection and saw what the realm needed to see. Tall, composed, dark-haired, my features sharpened by restraint rather than softened by youth. The silver hawk, clasped at my shoulder, caught the light, proud and merciless. I did not see myself when I entered the eastern gardens. The court bloomed like a field of rare flower silks, in blues and greens, jewels flashing, laughter rising in bright, careful bursts. The garden had been prepared for display. Roses climbed trellises in disciplined abundance. Fountains sang softly. Even the air seemed arranged. Lady Seraphine stood near the central path, radiant and unmoving, as if she had been placed there by an artist's hand. Her gown was ivory trimmed with crimson embroidery, fitted to perfection. Rubies glinted at her throat. Her pale hair was braided and crowned with a delicate circlet, not a queen's crown, but something that suggested inevitability. When she saw me, she smiled as though the world had behaved exactly as she expected. "My prince," she said, inclining her head just enough to be gracious, not enough to be humble. "You honor me." The courtiers leaned in, pretending not to listen. I offered my arm. She took it with a gloved hand cool against my sleeve. We walked. Every step felt rehearsed. Every smile cost me something I could not name without breaking. "You were quiet last night," Seraphine said lightly, her gaze forward. I half expected a poem or a protest. "I was tired," I replied. "Of course," she said. "Power exhausts those who hesitate." I glanced at her. She met my eyes openly, her own bright and sharp. "You need not fear me," she continued, her voice low. "I know you did not choose this. Neither did I, but we are fortunate. You and I, we can make necessity elegant, elegant." That was the word she chose for surrender. Before I could answer, Lord Chancellor Marius appeared as if summoned by her tone. He bowed, all warmth and courtesy. "Your Highness, my lady," he said, "the people are delighted to see you together. There is reassurance in such images. I'm pleased to provide it," Seraphine said smoothly. Marius's gaze flicked to me, assessing. "Your presence has already calmed certain uncertainties, especially among the border lords." "Uncertainties," I echoed. "Yes," he replied. "They wonder whether the crown stands firm, whether it will be distracted." Seraphine's grip on my arm tightened almost imperceptibly. Marius smiled. "But today has answered many questions." We continued walking, the Chancellor falling into step beside us, guiding the path with subtle authority. The gardens seemed suddenly narrower, the air heavier with observation. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, nobles who had watched me grow, women who had once speculated about my future with indulgent curiosity. Their eyes now held calculation. At the edge of the path, guards stood at attention. Rowan was among them. He did not look at me. His posture was perfect, disciplined, his gaze fixed straight ahead. The black of his uniform set off the silver of his insignia. The scar at his jaw stark and unforgiving in the sunlight. The sight of him struck me harder than any accusation. This was what obedience looked like. This was what survival demanded. Seraphine noticed my hesitation. "Is something amiss?" she asked sweetly. "No," I said, too quickly. She followed my gaze, then smiled. "Ah, the captain. He has quite the reputation. Loyal, dangerous, useful." Her tone sharpened on the last word. "I value loyalty," she added, as if to remind me. "As do I," said. Marius's eyes lingered on Rowan for a fraction longer than necessary, then returned to me. "We all do," he said. "That is why we must ensure it remains uncomplicated." The word landed like a threat. After the walk, the court dispersed, buzzing with satisfaction. Certainty had been displayed. The image was complete. I was escorted to the council chamber before I could retreat. Inside, the long table gleamed beneath banners of crimson and gold. Maps were spread across its surface, weighted at the corners with carved stones. Markers denoted troop movements, supply lines, contested borders. The war that had been a whisper was now ink and wax. My father sat at the head, his expression grim. Cassian leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed, impatience barely restrained. Eloan sat silently, her hands folded, eyes alert. Marius cleared his throat. "Now that the court has seen unity, we may speak freely." "About the war," Cassian said eagerly. "Yes," Marius replied. "And about succession." The word pulled the room tighter. "The northern marches report skirmishes," Marius continued, gesturing to the map. "Nothing decisive yet, but if the lords sense weakness, they will press," Cassian finished. "Let me ride. Give me command." My father did not answer immediately. His gaze was on me. "The prince's marriage will secure the coast," Marius said. "But a wedding alone does not win battles. We must present strength on every front." "And how?" my father asked. "Do you suggest we do that?" Marius folded his hands. "By involving the heir." Publicly, Cassian straightened. Eloan's eyes flicked to me. "Alaric should accompany the army to the border," Marius said. "Not as commander, of course, as symbol. Let the soldiers see him. Let the lords swear oaths in his presence. Let the enemy understand that the future king stands ready." My pulse quickened. "The border is not ceremonial," I said. "No," Marius agreed. "It is educational." Cassian laughed. "Careful, Chancellor. You'll frighten him." I shot my brother a look. "I am not frightened." Cassian's grin widened. "Then you'll enjoy it." My father studied me in silence. "What say you?" he asked. I saw the trap clearly. Refusal would confirm weakness. Acceptance would place me exactly where the council wanted me. Visible, vulnerable, shaped by their narrative. "I will go," I said. Marius inclined his head, pleased. "Excellent. The men will be inspired and watched," Eloan said quietly. All eyes turned to her. "The border is where loyalty is tested," she continued, "and where accidents happen." Marius smiled thinly. "You see danger everywhere, Princess." "I see patterns," she replied, "especially when they repeat." My father raised a hand. "Enough. The decision is made." The meeting adjourned with murmurs of approval. As I rose, Cassian clapped my shoulder. "Try not to look so solemn. Soldiers prefer confidence." "You prefer blood," I replied. His smile faded. "Someone has to spill it." Outside the chamber, I walked alone through a corridor lined with banners of past victories. Faces of long-dead kings stared down at me, stern and judging. I wondered which of them had wanted something forbidden, which of them had obeyed anyway. A voice stopped me. "Your Highness," I turned. Marius stood a short distance away, hands clasped behind his back. "You are adapting quickly," he said. "That is wise. I am doing what is required," I answered. "Precisely." He stepped closer. "I would advise you to continue, especially now." "Now?" I asked. "There are concerns," he said, "among the guard." My breath caught. "Concerns, rumors," he clarified. "Attachments, misplaced loyalties." I met his gaze. "Captain Vale has served faithfully for years." "Indeed," Marius agreed, "which is why it would be tragic if his reputation were compromised." The implication was naked now. "What do you want?" I asked. Marius's smile was almost kind. "Nothing unreasonable. Distance, discipline, reassurance." "And if I refuse?" I asked. He shrugged lightly. "Then the council will protect the realm in its own way." He bowed and left me standing beneath the banners, my hands clenched at my sides. That evening, I found Rowan in the armory. He was alone, stripping a sword with methodical care. The light from the braziers traced the planes of his face, the strength in his forearms. He looked up when I entered, surprise flickering before discipline reclaimed him. "You should not be here," he said. "I know," I replied. Again, those words. "They are sending me to the border," I said. He paused, cloth stilled against steel. "When? Soon?" His jaw tightened. "It is dangerous." "Yes, deliberately so," he added. I did not deny it. He sheathed the sword and turned to face me fully. "They are closing around you. I am aware, and yet you walk into it. What choice do I have?" I asked, the question tearing loose before I could stop it. Rowan stepped closer, his voice low. "You always have a choice." I laughed softly, bitter. "Do I?" He did not answer immediately. When he did, his words were careful. "If they forced you to choose between the crown and yourself, the crown will win." I met his eyes. "And if the crown is already chosen?" For a moment, the soldier vanished, and only the man remained angry, helpless, aching. "They will use me against you," he said. "They already are," I replied. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we could not say. When I turned to leave, his voice followed me. "Be careful," he said. I did not look back. If I did, I might not stop. That night, alone in my chamber, I stared at the ceiling painted with wars and angels. The inevitability pressed down on me harder than ever, not as fate, but as design. A design drawn by council hands, sharpened by ambition, and enforced by love twisted into duty. The war was coming, and I was no longer certain which side I was being prepared to fight on. The road to the northern border cut through land that had once been gentle. I remembered riding through these fields as a child, when the grass had grown high and soft, when farmers waved with hands uncalloused by fear. Now the earth was scarred by trenches half dug and abandoned, by the ruts of wagons carrying grain and iron instead of fruit. Villagers crouched low against the wind, their banners faded, their doors barred too early in the day. War does not arrive all at once. It leans in slowly, testing where a place will break. I rode at the center of the column, my cloak fastened against the cold, my horse restless beneath me. Soldiers flanked me on both sides, armor dulled by travel, faces set into expressions meant to reassure. They bowed their heads as I passed. Some smiled, some stared. They were looking at the future, and I felt the weight of it in every mile. Cassian rode ahead, laughing with the captains, his voice carrying easily. He belonged here in a way I did not. The men responded to him instinctively, as if battle were a language he spoke without learning. Rowan rode behind me. He had been assigned to my personal guard by order of the council. The irony was sharp enough to cut. They trusted him to protect me, and in doing so, they kept him close, where every glance could be counted, every step observed. He maintained perfect distance, professional, unreadable. It took all my restraint not to look back. When we reached the border fortress, dusk was falling. The walls loomed dark against a bruised sky, banners snapping in the wind like restless birds. Fires burned along the ramparts. The smell of iron and smoke clung to the air. The garrison assembled as I dismounted, knees bent, voices rose in salute. The sound rolled over me like a tide. "Your Highness," the commander said, bowing deeply. "We are honored." I nodded, offering the practiced smile. "The honor is mine." Inside, the fortress was colder than the palace, its stones stripped of ornament. Maps covered the walls, marked and remarked. Messengers came and went with urgent steps. This was not a place of beauty, it was a place of waiting. That night, I stood on the battlements alone, watching the dark beyond the walls. Somewhere out there, enemy fires flickered faintly, like stars fallen too low. Boots sounded behind me. "You should rest," Cassian said, joining me. He leaned on the stone with easy confidence. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "Perhaps I am," I replied. He snorted. "You always make it heavier than it is. This is simple. They test us, we strike, they retreat, and if they do not," I asked, "then we crush them," he said without hesitation. I turned to him. "Does it never trouble you? The cost?" He frowned slightly, as if the question itself were foreign. "Someone must pay it. Better them than us." "You sound like father." Cassian smiled. "High praise." He studied me for a moment, his tone shifting. "They're watching you closely. You know. The council, the men, everyone. You cannot afford doubt." "I am aware," I said. "Good," he replied. "Then play your part, smile, speak of honor, let them believe." "And what do you believe?" I asked. He hesitated, just briefly. "I believe we are running out of time." With that, he left me to the cold. The attack came 3 days later, not at dawn, not with horns and banners, but at night, when the fog crept low and the watchfires burned dim. A probing strike, sharp, precise, too organized to be random. The alarm rang through the fortress, bells clanging, boots pounding stone. I was pulled from my chamber by Rowan before I had fully woken, armor pressed into my hands. "Stay behind the inner wall," he ordered, fastening my breastplate with efficient hands. "Do not argue." I wanted to tell him I was not a child. I wanted to tell him that standing idle while men bled made me feel ill. I said nothing. From the ramparts, I watched torches flare and arrows arc into the dark. The clash of steel rose, harsh and intimate. Shouts echoed, then cut short. Cassian led the counterstrike, his voice ringing above the chaos. He moved like something born for violence, decisive and fearless. And then I saw it. A section of the wall near the eastern gate buckled under pressure it should have withstood. The enemy surged there with alarming speed, as if they knew exactly where to press, to exactly close the gate. Someone shouted. Rowan was already moving. He pushed me back hard, almost knocking me off balance. "Stay," he said, then ran. I ignored him. I followed. The eastern gate was chaos, smoke, blood, screams. Soldiers fought hand to hand, faces twisted with effort and fear. I saw one fall, his helm rolling away to reveal eyes wide with shock. The inevitability I had felt for weeks surged into certainty. This was no accident. Rowan reached the gate mechanism, shouting orders, fighting through bodies to get there. An enemy blade flashed toward him from the side. I did not think I acted. I grabbed a fallen spear and drove it forward, clumsy but desperate. The man went down with a cry, surprise etched on his face. Rowan turned, eyes flaring when he saw me there. "I told you to stay back," he shouted. "There was no time," I replied, breathless. He swore and pulled me behind him as the gate groaned shut, iron slamming into iron. The pressure eased. The enemy retreated into the fog, their objective unfinished, but their message clear. When the noise finally faded, the cost became visible. The courtyard was littered with wounded. Blood darkened the stone. The smell of it made my stomach twist. Cassian emerged, his armor dented, his grin gone. "They knew," he said, spitting blood to the side. "They knew where to hit." The commander nodded grimly. Someone leaked information. All eyes turned, subtly, inevitably, toward me. The air, the symbol, the convenient focal point. By morning the whispers had begun. In the mess hall, conversations paused when I entered. Eyes followed me with a mixture of reverence and unease. I heard my name murmured with questions attached. Rowan avoided me entirely. That hurt more than the suspicion. At midday, a messenger arrived from the capital bearing the council's seal. I broke it open with hands that did not quite shake. The words were formal, polite, damning. For the security of the realm, an inquiry would be conducted into the breach. Until its conclusion, my movements were to be limited. My guard reassigned. Certain individuals placed under review. Captain Rowanvale was among them. I crushed the parchment in my fist. When I found Rowan, he was being relieved of his command. 2 officers stood nearby, stiff with discomfort. "It's temporary," one muttered. "Orders from the council." Rowan nodded, his face carved from stone. "I understand." I did not. "This is my fault," I said when we were briefly alone. "No," he replied immediately. "It is theirs. They are using you," I said. "They always intended to," he answered. The inevitability tightened, no longer abstract but personal and cruel. "I can stop it." He shook his head. "You cannot. Not without confirming everything they want to believe." His eyes softened then, just slightly. "This is the price of being close to you." I wanted to tell him not to pay it. I wanted to tell him I would choose differently if I could. Instead, I watched as he was escorted away, his sword taken, his insignia removed. That night, alone again, I understood the shape of the war more clearly. It was not only at the borders, it was inside the walls, inside my family, inside myself, and it was closing in. The fortress fell quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Not the quiet of peace, but the hush that follows injury, when everyone moves carefully, afraid of reopening wounds. Men spoke in murmurs, boots softened their steps. Even the wind along the battlements seemed subdued, as if it had learned restraint. I was confined to my chambers. The council's words were courteous, almost apologetic, for my safety, for clarity, for the good of the realm. They dressed confinement as concern, suspicion as protection. A prince behind a locked door is still a prisoner. I sat alone at a narrow table carved from dark oak, staring at a goblet of untouched wine. Outside my window, the borderlands stretched grey and unforgiving. Smoke rose from distant fires where bodies were burned, enemy and ours together, distinctions erased by ash. Rowan was gone from the corridor. That absence hurt more than chains ever could. I replayed the moment at the gate, again and again, the way the enemy blade had risen, the instinct that had driven me forward, the brief shock on the man's face when my spear struck. I had never killed before. I had not felt triumph, only a hollow certainty settling deep in my bones. "This is what they are making you." A knock sounded. I expected a guard, or a messenger, or Marius, come to offer sympathy sharp as a knife. Instead, Alawan entered. She closed the door behind her without waiting for permission. She wore no jewels, no bright silks, only a dark green gown, severe and elegant, her hair unadorned. She looked tired in a way I had never seen before. "They will blame you," she said without preamble. "I know. They will not do it openly," she continued. "Not yet. They will say you were unfortunate, influenced, naive." I gave a humorless smile. "And eventually, they will say you are dangerous." I looked at my sister then, really looked at her. "Why are you telling me this?" She hesitated, just for a moment. "Because you are still my brother." "Still." "They removed Rowan," I said quietly. Her jaw tightened. "Yes, they mean to break him," I went on. "Or use him." "Yes, and you?" I asked. "What do you mean to do?" Alawan crossed the room and sat opposite me, folding her hands on the table. "I mean to survive," she said, "and to make sure you do too, if you are willing to listen." I leaned back, exhaustion pressing down on me like armor I could not remove. "Then speak." She lowered her voice. "The council did not merely respond to the breach, they anticipated it. The inquiry is theater." "Marius," I said. "Yes," she replied, "but not only him. There are others, lords who fear you." "Why?" I asked bitterly. "I have done everything they asked." "That," Alawan said, eyes sharp, "is precisely the problem. You do not resist, and a man who obeys without appetite is unpredictable." The words struck deeper than accusation. "They cannot read you," she continued. "They do not know what you want, and what cannot be measured must be controlled." I thought of Rowan, of Seraphine, of Cassian riding into battle with laughter on his lips, of my father's unyielding gaze. "I want very little," I said. Eloan's expression softened. "You want one thing very much." I looked away. She did not press. Instead, she stood. "They will summon you soon," she said. "When they do, they will offer you a choice that is not a choice." "What kind?" "One that costs you someone else." When she left, the room felt colder. The summons came at dusk. I was escorted, not led, escorted to a smaller council chamber within the fortress. Fewer banners, no audience, only those whose voices mattered. My father sat at the head of the table. Cassian stood to one side, arms crossed, his face shadowed and unreadable. Marius sat opposite my father, calm as ever. Two other councillors flanked him, men of influence whose names carried weight at court. Rowan was not present. That absence screamed louder than accusation. "Sit," my father said. I did. Marius folded his hands. "Your Highness, the inquiry has progressed." "Swiftly." "I'm sure it has," I replied. My father shot me a warning look. "Mind your tone." Marius smiled, indulgent. "No offense taken. These are difficult days." "Get to it," Cassian said sharply. Marius inclined his head. "Very well. Evidence suggests the breach was facilitated by information passed from within the fortress. And you believe it was me," I said. "No," Marius replied smoothly. "We believe it was someone close to you." I felt my chest tighten. "Rowan, the captain had access," Marius said. "Opportunity and motive." "Motive," I demanded. "He is devoted to you," Marius said gently. "Such devotion can override judgment." My father's jaw clenched. "He saved my life," I said. "And endangered the realm," Marius countered. "Whether intentionally or not." Cassian shifted. "This is madness." Marius glanced at him. "This is necessity." My father spoke then, his voice heavy. "There will be consequences." I leaned forward. "Say them." Marius did not hesitate. "Captain Rowanvale will be formally charged with dereliction of duty and suspected treason. He will be returned to the capital under guard." The room tilted. "And you," Marius continued, "will publicly distance yourself from him. You will condemn his actions. You will reaffirm your loyalty to the council and to your betrothal." My heart hammered so loudly I was certain they could hear it. "And if I refuse?" I asked. My father met my gaze, and for the first time I saw something like sorrow there. "Then I will be forced to choose between you and the realm." Silence pressed in. This was the fracture Eloan had warned me of. If I defended Rowan, I would confirm every suspicion. I would weaken my claim. I would endanger my family, perhaps even start a civil war in the midst of an external one. If I condemned him, I would save myself and destroy him. The inevitability I had felt for so long reached its breaking point. It was no longer abstract. It had a name, a face, a cost. "I need time," I said. Marius shook his head. "The announcement will be made tomorrow." My father's voice softened dangerously. "Alaric, this is the moment kings are made, or lost." I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my lids, I saw Rowan at the gate. Rowan in the armory. Rowan standing at attention, loyalty carved into his spine. I opened my eyes again. "I will speak tomorrow," I said. Marius smiled, satisfied, wise. As I was escorted back to my chamber, The walls seemed closer, the ceiling lower. The fortress felt less like shelter and more like a tomb. That night, sleep did not come. I sat in the dark and understood the truth at last. The crown did not merely watch, it demanded sacrifice. And by dawn, I would have to decide who I was willing to bleed for.